Good evening. We'd like to call the Durham City Council meeting to order Monday, November the 17th, and certainly want to welcome all of you that are with us this evening. If we could just take a moment for silent meditation, please. Thank you. Councilman Brown, lead us in the pledge.
All rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mayor Bell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cole McFadden, Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Katati, Councilmember Davis, Councilmember Moffitt, and Councilmember Shule.
I like that. Good evening. We have a few proclamations that we would like to present this evening. The first is recognition of Sister Cities and the Mayor's Award promoting international understanding. And I saw Brady Searles. If you mind coming up, Brady, and joining us. Is Ms. Kathy Davison present? Join us, please. Bill Ingram is here. Is Robin Barth there? Thank you. Who else do you have? That's it. Is she here? Oh, Miguel. Great. In fact, I'm going to ask Brady Searles if he will make some comments. Brady is president and chairman of Sister Cities, and he's been doing a yeoman's job. So, Brady, if you mind.
Thank you, Mayor Bell. We want to say thank you to you and to the City Council members for all of your support of Sister Cities of Durham. We're excited that this fall we are recognizing 2 individuals and 2 organizations as a combination of Sister Cities of Durham and the Office of the Mayor, presenting an award for their promoting international understanding. We did the initial recognition at our annual meeting in October, where we also included one guest who's an international guest, but she's back in China now, Xunyang Duan. But we're excited that these could be with us today, and as we follow up with the award to present the certificate to them. And I would like to read briefly an idea of what the certificate reads. The Honorable William V. Bell, the Honorable William V. Bill Bell, Mayor, on behalf of the citizens and the City of Durham, North Carolina, and Sister Cities of Durham, North Carolina, will present the award for promoting international understanding, signed by the Mayor and myself representing Sister Cities. We are excited for your involvement and your commitment to international understanding in the City of Durham as we become more and more aware of our international connections. Mayor Bell, you'll be handing out the certificates. Kathy Davison is a social studies and world history teacher at Riverside High School, has developed an international curriculum there, and coordinates international study tours. Just got back from Denmark.
This is my neighbor, Bill Ingram, president of Durham Technical Community College.
Dr. Bill Ingram has done a great job for promoting the international composition of the student body at Durham Tech Community College. He also initiated the establishment of the Center for the Global Learner. And so Durham Tech Community College has done an amazing job with regard to developing an international connection and international student body. Congratulations. Sister Communities of San Ramon, Nicaragua. Representing them is Robin Barth. This organization has developed a number of associations with a rural area in Nicaragua, developing ecotourism, but also helping them build a number of schools, school kitchens, libraries, and also helping promote the artwork of those groups there. So Robin, congratulations to Sister Communities of Nicaragua. San Ramon. And the Latino Community Credit Union, they have developed a program and an institution based here in Durham that now has 11 branches all throughout North Carolina as a credit union, as a major banking institution, helping immigrants develop a pattern of merging into the mainstream economic system of North Carolina and the United States. They now serve a customer base that represents over 100 countries. Miguel Rubiero, the chairman of the board, is representing them.
Thank you. I'd like to call up Andre Jones, founder of the Durham Bull Z, All-Star Z basketball team. Head coach Tony Green and assistant coach Kenneth Burris. Are they here? Thank you. And I'd like the entire team, if you could stand up just in a little circle here. You know, I say constantly that we are a city of many achievements, and we're certainly becoming a city of champions as far as athletics go. I like to read a letter on behalf of the Durham City Council and all the residents of Durham. I extend my congratulations and recognition to the Durham Bull Z, All-Star Z basketball team on its recent national championship title win at the National Basketball Travel Association tournament in North Myrtle Beach, which was held July 23rd to July 27th, 2014. Now, Durham is truly a place of champions where great things happen, and this most recent championship and the national recognition it brought to the city of Durham is yet another example of its greatness. I'm happy to know that the Bull Z were originally members of the Durham Parks and Recreation Youth League, and because of their drive and tenacity, a decision was made to expose the team to competition outside of Durham. The Bull Z's travel has taken them to compete in tournaments in South Carolina, Virginia, and the cities of Oxford, Raleigh, and Greensboro, North Carolina. And again, I want to acknowledge the founder of the Durham Bull Z, All-Star Z, Andre Jones, head coach Tony Green, and assistant coach Kenneth Burris, as they have worked entirely with this great team. And once again, I extend my congratulations for all that you do for these young men. They're certainly the type of young men that we're looking forward to meet leaders of our city. At one point in time, one of you might be sitting up here in the mayor's seat, might be sitting up here on the city council. You might be coaching a pro basketball team, right? All that, huh? All right. But again, we really appreciate it. You know, we talk about trying to find opportunities for our young people. And it's a lot of great things that are happening in Durham, but we certainly recognize when persons such as yourselves take the time to spend with these young men, and the fact that young men make the choice of getting involved with a league like this, it says an awful lot about it. And so I really appreciate what you're doing and wish you the best. I'm going to present these to the coach and any comments that you might have.
I just want to congratulate these guys again. They did a wonderful job. We have been in existence for 4.5 years. We are a 501c nonprofit, and we are still looking for help. We have a overall count of, I think, 50 or 60 athletes. In order to keep this program, running, we're going to need help. But like I said, hats off to these guys. They worked hard. We went to Myrtle Beach as underachievers. We lost our first 2 games, and I told them, I said, look, we're not doing any partying at the beach until y'all bring this championship home. So they turned it around, and they made me very, very proud. Today they are champions, and just give it up for them one more time.
I want to ask Councilman Eddie Davis if he would join me, please. This is something that I take a great deal of pride in being able to be a part of this presentation to persons that I've known, I guess, since I've been in this community. I've had an opportunity to interface with them and know the work that they've done and continue to do to make this a great community. It's a proclamation honoring the 1943 Hillside Hornets football team, and I'm going to ask Eddie if he will make comments or introduce persons that are receiving.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I am very pleased to have come in contact with these gentlemen also, and with the aura and the legacy of that outstanding 1943 football team that was undefeated, untied, and unscored upon for the entire season. So I'm very pleased that we have Dr. Joe Mitchell with us, and if you all would just come forward. Take your time. Mr. Artis Plummer, Mr. Thomas Taylor, and we're looking for Mr. Willie Bradshaw. I don't know whether he's got, I think he was his daughter's trying to, yeah. And there may be other members of the 43 Hornets Club. Do we need to add them to the list? And I would also like to ask the family of Johnny L. Ford, who was the captain of that team, if they would come forward and stand with us also. I guess Mr. Bradshaw's not here. We'll get it to him. Do you? Okay. Well, I will read the resolution, and it's a very nice one. It is a proclamation honoring the 1943 Hillside Hornets football team. Whereas Durham's 1943 Hillside High School football team had an undefeated season, and whereas the 1943 Hornets gridiron squad was untied by any of its high school opponents, and whereas the 1943 Hornets defense held each and every one of its opponents scoreless, and whereas the 1943 Hillside team amassed a total of 320 points against their rivals from Rocky Mount, Chapel Hill, Greensboro, Raleigh, Petersburg, Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, and Roanoke, Virginia. And whereas the 1943 Hornets football team was captained by Johnny L. Ford and coached by Herman H. Riddick and Curtis C. Mabry, and whereas the 1943 Hornets closed out their season with a 40-0 victory over the Addison High School of Roanoke, Virginia, in what was called the Turkey Day Classic at the Durham Athletic Park on Thanksgiving afternoon, November 25th, 1943. And whereas a few members of the undefeated, unscored upon, and untied 1943 Hillside Hornets football team are still active citizens of Durham, including Artis J. Plummer, Thomas K. Taylor, Willie R. Bradshaw, and Dr. Joseph T. Mitchell. Now therefore, I, William V. Bill Bell, Mayor of the City of Durham, North Carolina, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, November 25th, 2014 as 1943 Hornets Day in Durham in honor of the 71st anniversary of the completion of their legendary season. Furthermore, I urge all citizens to make special note of this historical achievement of this outstanding group of student athletes. Witness my hand and the corporate seal of Durham, North Carolina on this 17th day of November 2014, and is signed by Mayor Bell.
We thank you, Mayor Bell, Mr. Eddie Davis. This is a great honor for us after all these years. Some of our members are, I don't know how many actually are still living, but most of us, I think a lot of us went on to play college football and then moved to different parts of the country. We will always remember for our deceased members and for our deceased coaches. And we thank you so very much. Thank you.
Mayor Bell, members of the City Council, and all visitors, thank you for coming tonight. And I'm very proud of the 1943 football team, because you will find professors, teachers, and doctors that came out of the 43 team. I am not a doctor, but I am an artist, and my mother named me artist. So whenever you see a sign, think about Art Sign Company. Thank you very much.
Mayor Bell, council members, and friends, it's indeed a pleasure for me to be honored with these legend fellows from the 4300 Club. Their motto and things were, anybody that wanted to be a part of this after they set this club up had to be voted on. And here I am through North Carolina Central. I applied and was voted on, and I've been in 35, 40 years. I feel like I was everything but being hit out there on the football field. I've helped the club to sponsor most things that we've backed Hillside, Southern, and the band in doing throughout the years. And I'm just indeed a pleasure to be a part of this. Thank you.
Mayor Bell, it gives me great honor to stand instead for my dad. Growing up, I heard how good he was, and I tried to follow in his footsteps. In fact, Coach Blunt gave me number 43 that I wore as I played. And it's an honor to have known these men, not only as athletes, but as men who forged a legacy for these young boys here. It goes a lot deeper than being able to play football. It goes to developing young men, and as we always say, everybody can't wear that blue and white.
We're waiting for one of the other team members to come up, Coach Willie Barshaw. Let me say about Artis Plummer, not in deference to anybody else. When I first came to Durham, and when I was a relatively young person running for the Board of County Commissioners, Art tells you about, Art paints all the signs around Durham. His art sign is where he's from. But I met him because he had a club, and he let me hold one of my fundraisers there. Yeah, that's good. And I remember it distinctly because there's another singer called William Bell, and he was coming in town also to be at Artis' club, so we were playing off these names. So we go back a long ways, and Artis, I never forget you for that, and I sincerely appreciate it, and I consider you to always be a friend. Now, let this other guy come up here, this young man, and see what kind of smack he's going to talk. All right, Willie, come on up.
I must apologize. Please let me apologize. Excuse me, please. I won't say what else I want to say. Eddie called me and told me about this, and I thought it was great. We have had others of this particular magnitude. What I do have is a picture of the 1943 team. And what I'm going to do is give this to whoever wants it. It needs to be cleaned up some, put in another frame, and then you can have it. Just give me this one back. That's the point about it. This was a good team. And a lot of people say, well, how did all of you get together? We lived in various communities. In fact, I think when I look at this picture, everybody on this picture lives in a different community except maybe one or two. And we learned about each other during the summer when we played softball, coming up as kids. When we got to high school, everybody wanted to play football. So that was the thing about it. So we got together and became the football team. Coach Riddick pulled us together, and he had us so we was prepared. A couple of little jokes go along with this particular things. One day we were practicing, and Coach had a spinner series to where you took steps, made a spin out of it, and you went the way when you came out of the spin. This particular kid went the wrong way that day, and he ran into the biggest boy we had on the team, who was Rat McCullers, and he weighed about 225, and this boy weighed about 120. So he got up, pulled his helmet off, laid it down, pulled his jersey off, laid it down, started pulling off his clothes. When he got to the dressing room, he was buck naked, and he had no clothes on. So those are some of the things that we had happen to us. And one year, we had won the games, and we were invited to go play at Norfolk. And this is on my boy Joseph Mitchell. We had to ride, no train ride. We were going to catch the train and go to up to Norfolk to play. Norfolk. So we rode our train at that particular time, which was a wood truck. Caught the wood truck, raining that morning. All of us had on our nice clothes, dressed up like these fellows are now. And we riding on the back of a wood truck with a canvas over our heads, going to Norfolk, Virginia. When we got to Norfolk, now all of us were wringing wet. Now, what are we going to do? We didn't carry any clothes with us because we thought we were coming back that Friday night. So we had to spend the night. And one of my friends wanted to know what he was going to sleep in that night. The boys told him you would have to sleep tonight as you are. You know, that meant you had to sleep as you were. But it was good, and I think that we formed everlasting friends. And once most of us went to college, followed Coach Riddick. Most of us went to college, and after coming out of college, we formed a group that was known as the 43 Hornets Club. So that's the thing about it. And I'm sorry that I'm late. I'm not going to put that on nobody but me. But there's another person that is equally responsible. But thank you very much.
Ed has got some proclamations that he's going to give out.
Members of the team to actually have one of these proclamations, and we will get copies of it for everybody who's in the home field. Okay. Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks again.
The council would love for you to stay as long as you want, but you don't have to stay for the entire meeting. So if you want to depart at any point, you can feel free to do so.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You did.
I'll tell you about bringing it.
It's okay.
Coach, we're going to picture frame and go get the frame and picture right back to you. We're going to give it to the clerk, and she's going to take care of that and put it in the city council committee room. All right? Yeah, we're going to get it back to you. You know, we don't usually take this long of a time when we have the proclamations, but Coach Bradshaw and all his brothers, we appreciate what you do. That's how much we think of you.
Mr. Plummer, before you go, I was just going to say that Friday night I was over at Hillside High School for the opening of the theater season. The Mayor Pro Tem was there, the mayor was there, but one of the things that was really clear to me is that not only do they have a great program, but they depend very heavily on the village, on the community. And I don't think you were there that night, but they raved, Mr. Tabb raved about you and your contributions to the program, so thank you.
You do yours when you do yours. Okay. Okay, let me ask first, are there comments by members of the council and members of the council? We recognize the city manager for his priority items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. No priority items this evening.
Likewise, recognize the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and with your indulgence, I would like to take a moment to recognize the Weeblo 1 dens from Durham Cub Scout Pack 424. They're seated in the back here. They're sponsored by Immaculate Conception Catholic Parish on Chapel Hill Street. These young men are fourth graders working on their Weeblo's Citizen Activity Badge requirements and citizenship pin. This visit is just one component of their journey toward earning this badge, which has included hands-on practice with handling the United States flag, learning about our rights and responsibilities as citizens, and participating in service projects with PAC 424 and their families. And the three Weeblo dens are led by Den 3, Christopher Meldrum and Christy Raska. They're the leaders there, if they can raise their hands. And
Why not stand, if you don't mind,
Yep.
stand. So
Den 5 is led by Sabrina Lamar and Scott Kuhn. Sabrina Lamar is the wife of Senior Assistant City Attorney Fred Lamar, and if you could all stand. And Den 7 is led by Tony Campione and Thomas Jansen. And if the young man can stand up too, it's part of your citizenship pin. That's all I have for you tonight, Mr. Mayor.
That's great. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening, and more importantly, for those that are leading these young men, we appreciate that, and we appreciate the young men making a choice to get involved in the scouting program. It's a great program, and I'm sure you're going to benefit from many, many years to come. And I'll say, like we said to the other guests, you don't have to stay here unless you want. If you get up to leave, that's fine, but we realize that you may have something else you may want to do. You might want to stay here and see how we try to conduct business. That might be a lesson in itself also. Okay, let me ask, are there any priority items by the city clerk?
No items, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Recognize Councilman Moffitt.
since they're here for a citizenship merit badge and they're working on, and the first part of our meeting often confuses a lot of people. With your indulgence, I'll tell them very quickly what we're about to do, if you don't mind. Sure. We held a work session 10 days ago. We held a work session, and we talked about a lot of the items that are on tonight's agenda. So the first part of the agenda is called the consent agenda. And if nobody objects, and anybody in the audience can object, or anybody up here can object, and but for all the items that people do not object to, those will be passed with one motion. And then a whole bunch of business is concluded all at once, and then the rest of the meeting is for everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll proceed with the agenda. First item is consent agenda. Can be approved by a single vote unless a member chooses to pull an item or someone in public pulls it. The first item is approval of City Council minutes. Item 2 is Human Relations Commission appointment. Item 3 is amendment to Civilian Police Review Board procedural manual. Item 4 is selection of Urban Design Ventures LLC. That's item 3. Okay. Item 4 is selection of Urban Design Ventures LLC for the preparation of a 5-year consolidated plan, annual action plan, and analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Item 6 is property exchange between the City of Durham and the North Carolina Department of Transportation for the Guest Road Widening Project and the Mountains to Sea Trail. Item 7 is Housing and Urban Development Fair Housing Assistance Program, 2014-2015 Grant Project Ordinance. Item 8 is the Environmental Workforce Development and Job Training Contract between the City of Durham and the trustees of Durham Technical Community College, and we pull that item. I entertain a motion for the approval of the consent agenda items with the exception of items 3 and items 8. It's been properly moved and second. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
We'll move to item 9 on the general business agenda, and this is the Police Department's third quarterly report on crime and community relations. Recognize Police Chief Jose Lopez.
Mr. Mayor, councilpersons, Mr. Manager, City Attorney, this is the third quarter crime report, January to September 2014. Police Department's quarterly reports cover the Department's 6 performance measures as listed. The executive summary also includes additional statistics and information about significant accomplishments and highlights during the third quarter 2014. Part 1 violent crime accounted for approximately 14.5% of all Part 1 crime during the first 9 months of 2014. Part 1 crime was up by 19% at the end of September 2014. The rise in violent crime has been driven by a 32% increase in the number of reported aggravated assaults. We noticed that there was an increase in the number of shootings into occupied dwellings and vehicles earlier this year, and in many cases, there were multiple potential victims. Our aggravated assault statistics are calculated by the number of victims, not by the number of incidents. One of our top priorities has been the reduction of aggravated assaults, and I'm pleased to report that the number of aggravated assaults dropped almost 20% during the third quarter compared to the second quarter. Our violent incident response team continues to investigate all incidents involving shootings into residences and vehicles, and our crime analysis unit has provided intelligence information to commanders, investigators, and officers. Arrests have been made in 12 of the 2014 homicides, and a warrant has been issued in other cases, in another homicide for the year. There were 17 homicides at the end of the third quarter. There have been 20 homicides year to date compared to 24 homicides on this date in 2013. Property crime was up by 5% at the end of the third quarter due to increases in larcenies and in burglaries. We're continuing our residential awareness program to focus on residential burglaries. Almost 90% of the burglaries this year have been residences. Shoplifting accounted for 28% of our larcenies during the first 9 months of the year. Larcenies from vehicles and of vehicle parts made up almost 40% of our larcenies. During the third quarter, officers arrested several persons for multiple property crimes, and you can find more information about these arrests in the executive summary. Our clearance rates for the first 9 months of 2014 are above the FBI national average for cities our size in all categories except aggravated assault and rape. The violent clearance rate was also below the national average. We anticipate that our clearance rates will go up by the end of the year. There were 5,086 Priority 1 calls from January 1st, 2014 through September 30th, 2014. This is a 27% increase over the same period in 2013 when there were 4,012 Priority 1 calls. We did not meet our target of responding to 57% of Priority 1 calls in under 5 minutes. And we also did not meet our target of 5.8-minute average response time. Although our sworn ranks are at 99% staffing, we currently have 29 operational vacancies due to recruit officers being in various stages of training. There were 17 non-sworn vacancies at the end of the third quarter. I'd like to share with you some photos of many of the community events in which the Durham Police Department participated during the third quarter. More than 20 persons attended the Durham Police Department's free 6-week Citizens Academy, which started on August 26. The goal is to increase community support and awareness of police operations through education. Officers from the Great Unit held 3-week-long camps for children over the summer. The children participated in a variety of educational and fun activities, including horseback riding, swimming, teen court, and a tour of the Durham County Jail. Commanders and officers from several districts held commanders tours during July and August. They went to various locations in their districts to meet with residents in a relaxed setting. This year, we had another successful National Night Out event on August 5th. More than 100 neighborhoods throughout the city held activities, and officers and residents got to know each other better. In the coming weeks, we should find out where we rank nationally as far as National Night Out is concerned. Thank you.
Recognize Councilman Shule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief. This was, in a way, I think the data that was provided with this quarterly report, I actually consider kind of a landmark. You all had so much material, new reports and so forth that we were given, so much good information, and so I have questions on some of those, but I think the first thing I want to say is to you and to your staff, that I really appreciate the information and the transparency that it represents. My first question is, I'm just going in order of these reports here. On the bias-based policing report on page 2, there is a chart that has a compliance rate for several years. I wasn't sure what was being complied with. I think what it meant was the number of people that had actually filled out the paperwork.
Correct. The individuals who filled out the state form when they stopped vehicles.
Okay. So I have a suggestion that that be made clear.
Okay.
In that, I thought that's what it was, but I couldn't find a reference to it. And then, also in the interest of clarity, on page 6 of that report, there's a chart. And the last column of the chart is sort of strange upon first looking at it, because for the rows listed as male and female passengers, because this chart shows that 100% of the passengers were searched. I see the reason it's listed this way, but if you see in the same column, you'll see much smaller percentages of drivers searched, and I thought it made it a bit confusing to read. So again, I just think maybe an explanatory footnote about why this is 100% would be helpful.
Okay, we'll look at that then.
And then also then finally on the clarification, the column in many of the charts, there's a column on many of the charts that says total by race, and I don't think it quite means total by race. I think what it means is total of all races, and then in the final column I think it should say total all ethnicities. So I just want to suggest that you might want to make those clarifications. It would make it easier to read. I wanted to point out a couple of statistics in this report that I think point in a direction that we all want to see, which is away from the direction of racial bias, and I think they ought to be pointed out. And first, I think, is the fact that white drivers are ticketed at a higher rate than black drivers. And second is that African American drivers are much more likely simply to be given a verbal warning than white drivers. And I was glad to see these. I think there's some other statistics that remain troubling, which I'll mention in a minute, but I did want to point that out, Chief, and say that I think that that's a very positive, that's very positive in terms of when we're thinking about racial bias and does it exist in the force. Still troubling is the statistic that African American drivers are searched 6 times as often as white drivers. And I understand the argument that many of the traffic stops take place in high crime areas, and these areas are populated more heavily by African Americans, including those African Americans who call the police in for help. But this still strikes me, this 6 times is a very disproportionate number, and I hope we'll be seeing some improvement in this ratio. I think the demographic information that's provided in attachment 3 is excellent and does indeed help explain the disparity in stops by race, but I don't think it explains a 6 times disparity, and I hope we'll be improving from this baseline. And if you want to comment on that later, feel free. I was really proud that the department had gone to these lengths to get all this information out to our public and to the council in what I think is a very thorough and transparent way with these reports. And I know that this is an administrative burden for you and the members of your staff, but I also think it will build a lot of confidence in the public that the department is doing the right thing because we are providing this much information. It is so transparent. And now another question I have is on attachment 3. I wondered what a self-initiated call for service was and how that was different from a regular call for service.
Self-initiated service means that the officer themselves took it upon themselves to take that call, whether it was something that they observed and they had to take action, so they called it in.
Okay. Is that different from a directed patrol?
Directed patrol means that I am in an area that I've been directed to be in, looking for a series of events that probably have been reported in that area, such as maybe burglary suspects, things of that nature, or just simply to give a calm to that neighborhood.
So then a person who is answering who is making a self-initiated call for service, they're patrolling that area and then they see something, or they...
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Like a motor vehicle violation, someone who's acting suspicious. Basically, the term is saying that no one sent them to do this or her, that they saw something and took it upon themselves to take action. They were
Okay.
not dispatched.
Thank you. They were not dispatched. Thank you. Attachment 4, again, I wanted to say to you and to the department and to the city manager, congratulations on the work that you have already done to carry out the manager's decisions regarding the recommendations of the Human Relations Commission. I note that a solid majority of these decisions that the manager made in terms of the recommendations from the Human Relations Commission have already been translated into policy and completed. So again, I wanted to say to you and to your staff that I know this is a lot of work, and I think it's, again, building confidence in our residents, and I appreciate that. Attachment 8, congratulations for this report as well. I think it's significant because it shows the seriousness with which the department is policing itself in terms of officer violations or misconduct. And it shows that citizen complaints are taken seriously as well. And I think this is extremely important information for members of the public to know about. So I say this is very well done. I think that this is to see a list like this and to understand that the department is policing itself in a lot of detail is extremely helpful, and I appreciate having that information, and I think the public will too. In attachment 8, I also have a question, which is there are 3 categories listed there, and I wondered what's the difference between an administrative investigation and a performance review action. There are 3 categories listed. One of them is complaints from the public, and then there are these other 2, which I believe are internally generated. And so I wondered if you could tell me what the difference between an administrative investigation and a performance review action is.
Administrative investigation is one that I might call upon reference to something that we deem or see is wrong, such as something from a use of force investigation that's being done, or some other information that I might receive. And then the other one, the second one that you speak to, the performance review, is relative to what an officer did and how they performed, and we're looking into it to see if what they did was within policy and procedures.
So does that mean that the performance review is something that comes up in a routine performance review, and the administrative investigation might be something that came up outside of that?
It could be from an allegation that an officer did something that was outside of the policy and procedures, didn't do it right. Could be quite a few of those.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly I get it, but maybe I'll ask you later and try to get the clarification. Attachment 10, especially this was concerning the third quarter numbers that you reported on to us a minute ago, especially regarding the aggravated assaults. This is a good improvement over the second quarter number. I was wondering, the third quarter is, I wondered if you knew yet how things were going in the fourth quarter. Do we continue to improve these numbers for aggravated assault, or do you have any information on that yet?
Well, all of it is trending down, so we're very happy about that, and we're still going to work to continue it trending down.
Okay, good. The numbers regarding rape, which is of course a terrible crime, aren't where we want them to be. Is there anything particular happening this year that you all have identified regarding these rape cases? And are there, I know that you all pay a lot of attention to this, but I wondered if you had anything to offer specifically.
I think outside of the recent change in the description of rape,
yes, sir.
Legally, I'd have to get back to you to find out exactly where we are with them.
All right, thank you. I was impressed, as I always am in these reports, by the descriptions of the arrests that were made in significant violent crime cases. And I think that, again, for members of our public who have the opportunity to read this, it underscores the importance of the work the department is doing and the competence and dedication with which your officers do this work, even in the face of danger, as in these cases. Reading these specific cases is extremely it makes me appreciate the work that you do, and I know that our residents, if they take the time to do it, will as well. And Durham residents are very grateful for this work, Chief. I also appreciated reading about the special recognitions of officers, including Officer Pickle. I believe he graduated from the Police Academy just a couple of years ago. Is that right?
I'd have to look.
I believe I was at this graduation. Remember him winning several awards, graduating the top of the academy class, and it was great to see that he's fulfilled that potential. And congratulations, Officer Bond, Officer Gardner, and Officer Scazafava. I was especially glad to read about Officer Scazafava's work with Alliance Behavioral Health and the Misdemeanor Diversion Program. My wife's on the committee that's working to implement that program. She's particularly mentioned to me her appreciation of the participation of Chief Pendergrass. And so I want to thank you all for participating in the misdemeanor diversion program. I think it's important. I think it's going to help our kids a lot. And our department has a crucial role to play in that. Let me ask you about something you mentioned that I thought was troubling, that you've received 27% more Priority 1 calls in the first 9 months of 2014 than in the same period last year. And I wondered if you had any sense of why this has occurred.
I would have to look at the numbers to know exactly why it's occurred. We've just had an increase. I think part of it could also be we've got more people in the city of Durham than we did before. And hopeful, we also have individuals who are more inclined to call the police and trust us enough to give us a call.
Yeah, great. I hope that's the reason. I will note we're answering these calls with the same number of sworn officers, and so I know this is stressful in the department. But again, I appreciate the work that you all do in this regard. On attachment 11. In the third quarter, only 16 of 73 people who took our tests for recruits were from Durham. And this is something as you know, Chief, we've been talking about trying to increase the number of our recruits from Durham. Recently I've been in conversations with you and some of the other chiefs about our ways in which we're trying to reach out in Durham. And I think that so we all need to be thinking more about ways we can publicize the meaningful, fulfilling jobs and the incredibly important jobs that are in the Durham Police Department to our residents here in Durham. And I want to say I don't think that's a police department responsibility alone. I think we need to be giving some attention to how we can recruit more Durham police officers. And I think, for example, that Beverly Thompson and her office might have some ideas and thoughts about how we might want to try to think about this. But I hope that we can do that. And it's disappointing to see that low a number of the potential officers, that low a percentage being from Durham. And so, as I say, I know you all are reaching out and trying to figure it out, and I've heard recently about that in some detail from you all, but I really do think that it's a responsibility that all of us share. So thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. And again, I appreciate the amount of data that we had this time and the transparency it represents. And I think it was very valuable information, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Schul. Are there other comments by members of the council? Chief, I want to congratulate your team. I sent a note to the manager on 2 apprehensions that you guys made this past week. I thought that was really great police work. One had to do with the convenience stores, and other had to do with the pizza
delivery, yes.
Because we all know that people are innocent to proven guilty, but I think from what I read, I think that was really great police work to apprehend those persons as quickly as you did. And I guess the other piece that, and I've talked to the manager about this, it still troubles me that when I even look at those 2 cases, it's again a case of young African-American males. I think one kid was as young as 17 years of age.
Well, each team had a 17-year-old and somebody in their extremely early 20s,
Yeah.
let's say 21, 22.
Very young. And
yes, with guns.
With guns. And somehow we've got to get the message out that when they commit these crimes, they're going to get caught. And their life is just gone. I mean, they're out walking the streets free now, enjoying whatever they're enjoying, but they go out and do something stupid like that, and their lives are just wasted. And somehow we've got to get that message out to them.
If they follow us on Facebook, they'll be able to see it because we put it out there.
Well, I think we've got to do more than that. Obviously, the message isn't getting out, but it was great police work, but it's sorry state of affairs when we have our young African males getting involved in those type of issues. Let me ask you one other question. It had to do with the police recruit applicants. I noticed the number. I noticed you had those that failed the written test, those that failed the physical test. What does that mean? How many out of these 73 persons that you had applied, how many of them have gone on to the next stage?
I wouldn't have that numbers here.
Well, if you fail the written test, does that take you out?
If you fail, yes, it does.
And if you fail,
Oh, you mean the individuals who failed any part of it here?
Yeah.
It's taking them out, not 100%. It's still they have an opportunity to come back and try again. And we have quite a few who do. They may not make it the first time around, but they'll exercise more, they will study more, and they'll come back and be better prepared for it.
Well, of these numbers that you had here, assuming that the ones that failed the test, failed the physical test are out, do the rest represent the class that you got coming in? You had 73 people.
Right, because this is only a part of it. We still have to do the health side of it. We also have to do the background, and that will determine, that might take some people out of contention as we go forward. Does that answer the question, or?
I guess I was trying to figure out, you had 73 people. So far, how many are going through the process?
How many are still in the process?
Yeah.
I'd have to get back to you in reference to that to see where we are in the process.
Okay. All right. Recognize Councilman Moffitt.
I also just want to say thanks for all the information. There are two things. First, I wanted to ask, you made a comment in your report that you expect clearance rates to go up over the quarter that we're in right now, but I didn't hear why the clearance rates might go up, and I was curious about that.
As the numbers come in, as far as arrests that are being made, warrants served, that'll all go on. We're not done with the year.
So you're saying, but based on what you're seeing already in this quarter, you're expecting clearance rates to go up?
Yes.
Okay.
And normally, it's typical of the year. We normally, towards the end of the year, start clearing more cases.
Good, thank you. And you know that I followed a little bit the Chapel Hill's reporting of internal affairs cases, and I think, I'm not sure, somebody might send me an email and tell me I'm wrong, but I think that quarter to quarter, what gets dropped out are the complaints that are filed in a quarter but are still open at the end of the quarter, and that in the following quarter you don't see those reports. When I look through the cases here, I see 25 open cases right now, and so what I hope to see next quarter is how those 25 cases were disposed of, as well as the new cases that were filed in the current quarter.
Yeah, it'll be reflected.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate the information.
Thank you.
We have two persons that had signed up on this item, and I'm going to recognize them for 3 minutes each. Chris Tiffany and Victoria Peterson. Chris.
%of those searched at traffic stops last year were minorities, according to data from the Durham Police Department and from the Ferguson Police Department. Google racial profiling at traffic stops in Ferguson and Durham, but Ferguson is 63% black, Durham is about half white, and white neighborhoods are complaining that cars speed through their neighborhoods, threatening the lives of pedestrians and bicyclists, but cops are wasting time harassing minorities, for example, searching for chitlins and calling a woman an idiot for complaining. Both towns deny racial profiling bias. Durham hides the fact that for the first half of 2014, 93% of those searched at traffic stops this year were minorities here in Durham, because Durham is 93% black and brown and only 7% non-Hispanic whites, right? And of course, many of those few 7% white searched were still racial profile stops because you don't belong here. Segregationist stops in or near black neighborhoods, or in a car with a black face, ask what you're doing together. But the problems for the past few years are not just racial profiling at traffic stops, but also catch and release fishing expeditions targeting pedestrians. And when they put pedestrians down on their face, handcuff and search pedestrians, and find no drugs or weapons and let pedestrians go without charges, they don't have to document it like they're supposed to do at so-called random traffic stops. They should document pedestrian detention like they're supposed to do at traffic stops. And if you Google YouTube Durham, North Carolina police abuse, you'd see what you'd look like after you've been put down on your face, handcuffed, searched, let go without charges, and given a black eye with a left hook for complaining during the period of time covered by the 2014 third quarter report. Look her in the eye and tell her you deserve whatever happens to you. It's okay, though, she was just a pedestrian, so it wasn't racial profiling at a traffic stop. And the Durham Police Department does not want to track individual officer behavior if there's not sufficient aggregate data to warrant supervision, not unless there's enough sustained complaints to improve training for just the absolutely worst offenders, officers with a self-reported history of targeting women and or mixed couples. And heaven forbid that they should be evaluated by professionals for possible anger management issues or poor impulse control, which does this. Two common problems for police officers and ordinary street thug criminals. And why couldn't her complaint have been taken by Durham One Call rather than posted on YouTube by an investigator detective with policeabuse.com?
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to ask the manager if you can follow up on that, please, if you don't mind. I recognize Victoria Peterson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and City Council individuals. One of the things a lot of citizens ask me when I'm out in the community, because they know I come down and speak about crime and some of our other situations, concerns here in the community. They keep asking me, well, Mrs. Peterson, what are we going to do about the police chief? That's up to you folks, because I've asked in this community, I've come to the City Council numerous times and have asked for a new police chief. But as time goes on and as I continue to look at this situation, I think we need more than just a new police chief. We have some serious issues going on. Steve, I want you to know this. I have missed about 2 meetings. The last time I was here, I think Mr. Brown can also mention this, is that I mentioned about the murder that took place in McDougal Terrace. Mr. Davis, I don't know if you remember that. I've missed about 2 meetings. Since my meeting, we had a murder on Rosewood the other day. A group of young men broke into residential housing where people live and killed one of the young men there. He was a track coach. On Fayetteville Street, we had a shooting. A few days ago, we had another 2 men out close to Roxborough, going towards Roxborough, still in Durham, being shot. This community, besides Victoria Peterson, this community is going to have to come into this room and demand some alternative treatment to deal with our young men and women who are caught up in this criminal justice system. Part of the problem here, I mean, we've heard the police department said that they put out to recruit, to hire. Well, if you were 17 years old years ago in Durham and you committed a crime and you were considered a felon at the age of 21 or 16 or 17 now, here in Durham, North Carolina, here in the state, you can be considered a felon at a very young age. But let's say now you're 30 years old. You've changed your ways, you found a good church, and you know Miss Corey McFadden, you know Mr. Brown, and you're really getting your life in together, and you want to go and apply to become a nice police officer here in Durham. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, it will never happen. Unless this city government and our state changes the laws on the local level and on the state level about young men and women who get in trouble with the law as a young person, we're going to continue to have crime in this community. And that's what's happening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
I really wish I could get a few more minutes.
No, Ms. Peterson.
But I really have some more things to say. But
you can leave your remarks with the clerk if you haven't written, if you don't mind. Thank you. The police are investigating that. We're going to move to the general business agenda, public hearings. Item 10, Unified Development Ordinance, text amendment, tree coverage calculations.
Thank you. Michael Stock with the Planning Department. Before I begin, I want to indicate that all notifications have been performed for this public hearing according to law, and the affidavits are on file for review. Text amendment TC 140004. Actually, I'm sorry. 120003 is a privately initiated request by Horvath Associates to amend the method of calculating required tree coverage areas pursuant to Section 8.3 Tree Protection and Tree Coverage of the Unified Development Ordinance. The Durham City Council held a public hearing on this item back on February 3rd, 2014, and continued the item to May 19th, 2014 to allow the applicant to consider revisions based upon the comments received at that hearing. At the May 19th meeting, the council closed the hearing and referred the item back to administration upon the request of the applicant. Based upon the comments received during that February hearing, the applicant has subsequently revised the request, and that is found in attachment A1 of your packet. The original request would exempt all utility easements of record that are at least 50 feet wide from 50 feet in width from tree coverage calculations. The revised request would do the following. Allow the exemption only for single-family residential developments. The exemption could only be applied to tree replacement calculations. It would not be applied to tree preservation area calculations. And the exemption cannot be used for density or impervious surface calculations in the same area that is exempted. As a reminder, council will be required to take two actions, as similarly done with zoning map changes. The first action will be a vote on the amendment itself, and that is attachment B in your agenda packet. The second action will be a vote on the appropriate statement of consistency found in attachment C of your agenda packet. I believe the applicant is here to answer any questions. Thank you. I'll also be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. I would ask if there are questions by members of the council. First, we do have one person that's signed up to speak, Ron Harvard. Is there anyone else in the public that wants to speak on this item? If not, Ron, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, I shouldn't take that long. I did hear you last May. Went back and researched it, found out that the inequity with single family versus multifamily or commercial development, they can utilize these easements where the single family can't. Went and looked at 5 different neighborhoods, single family, and determined that the density and the impervious surface taken out of it really didn't have as much impact as the loss of lots with the additional tree coverage. So I agree with what Steve and Don said about the impervious coverage and the density, take it out as well. I think what you have before you is what you had asked for, and I ask for your full support. Thank you.
Welcome. I had a question, and Ron, as you indicated, this has been before the council, and we did what we did, but I must confess I didn't read it as thoroughly as maybe I should have, so that's why I had a few questions. The example that you presented, use an example of a 30-foot buffer, and what I'm hearing from the staff is 50 feet. Is that what is the number?
The exemption would be for any easement, utility easement or record of at least 50 feet wide.
At least 50 feet wide.
Correct.
Yeah.
And can I ask you why you went from what they proposed initially to what you're proposing now?
30 foot was the original one set up based on sewer easements. That's generally the width. And they really don't impact like utility easements. Utility easements start at 35, 45 feet, run 50 on the norm. But power line easements are the ones that are the most trouble. They're 100 to 350, 400 feet wide. And that's land that you can't plat into, where a sewer easement, you can plat your lot into it. Storm easements, you can plat the lot. But utility easements for the power company, you can't. Hence, we said, well, let's bump it up to the 50 or 60, And anything that's in excess of that, we would be able to get credit for and not use it in our calculation. Hence why we went with the excessive easements.
Okay, so 50 feet is what?
It's just 50, and that was consistent with actually what you heard back in February, too.
And then you use 20% for residential when you figure out what the total tree coverage area is for that area?
Well,
how does that work?
The difference comes into, there's two ways of calculating tree coverage. One is tree preservation, and you already get a credit toward protecting existing tree coverage versus taking it down and doing tree replacement. You need more area to do tree replacement. So thus the original application was just a blanket credit no matter what, tree save, tree preservation, or tree replacement. This limits it only to tree replacement, so you don't get any additional credit for tree coverage.
And this only applies to single-family residential
Correct.
developments?
Correct.
Okay. I'm straight. Any other questions? Anybody else that wants to speak on this item in the public? Let the record reflect no one else asked to speak. I will declare the public hearing to be closed. Matters back before the council. It's been properly moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilman Brown. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? And this is for the first one.
This is for the actual amendment itself.
Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Okay. Entertain a motion on the second. It's been moved by Councilman Schul, seconded by Councilwoman Catotti. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Thank you. We'll go back to the consent agenda items that were pulled. Item 3, we have Victoria Peterson and Chris Tiffany. This is an amendment to the Civilian Police Review Board Procedure Manual. Say what? You have 3 minutes.
For the police officer to deal with the manual and the surveillance of your cameras, right? Am I correct, or?
It's a Civilian Review Board.
For their recommendations?
Yeah. Procedure
Okay.
Manual.
Oh, excuse me, sir?
It's amendments to the Civilian Police Review Board Procedural Manual.
Okay. I wanted to speak on something else too, but I won't do it. I'll just stay with this. One of the things I would just like to ask, and still have not been given that information, and I thought that I asked Mr. Baker, but I definitely know I've asked the county about it. We arrest our juveniles, our young people in this community, and I do not know if they mention that in your manual. And I've asked over and over and over again, who gives the police officers, who has approved for the police officers to arrest juveniles and send them to the Durham County Jail instead of sending them to the detention facility? Juveniles that are still 16, 17, under the age of 18, and I do not know if that report addresses that. I did ask that to the City Council a few weeks ago to please give me something in writing to say who gave the police officer or the police officers the permission to do that. Because one of the problems that we're having, and you saw their report on your juveniles, you had well over 600 juveniles that have been arrested so far this year. And remember, those kids have to be educated in the Durham County Jail. And we know that that is not going on. The only educational program that is going on in the Durham County Jail is the GED program. And if you are a kid still in the public school system, you still should be educated or being educated by the regular school system curriculum and not a GED. And Steve, I hate to keep calling on you, sir, but I know you worked in that school system, and I'm sure that you know that. So that is one of my concerns, Mr. Mayor. If you folks would be able to address that and just sort of tell us who has that authority, who makes that decision. When that officer picks up a 16-year-old kid and they arrest that child, who makes the decision to send him to the Durham County Jail or either to send him to the youth home? Because see, once you start doing that, you put our young people in some serious problems, with some serious problems, because then they really seriously wind up with a criminal record. See, as long as you're a juvenile and you get in trouble with the law, that stays closed and quiet. Once that kid gets 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, they don't have to worry about somebody trying to find out something, particularly if they're trying to get their lives together. When a 16 and 17-year-old kid, and you know a lot of us have been that age and we've made some boo-boos traveling on this life journey, and you need a second chance. But if we can get them when they're 15, 16, and 17 years old, breaking along, we can get them early, let's try to work with them. So I'm asking the council that again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson.
If I can get that
I heard the question.
Yes, sir.
I don't know who makes that decision as to whether they go to the jail or to the detention home. But I do know in terms of once they're in the jail, that's up between the sheriff and the Board of Education in terms of what type of training they might have. I'll defer that answer to the manager. You know.
I think it's up to the magistrate.
Okay.
Not sure about that 100%, but that's my thought, the magistrate.
Well, we need to get something in writing because
Well,
I'm hearing
I'm sure there's something in writing, Ms. Peterson. We'll try to find an answer to
Can
that.
we get? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're quite
Thank
welcome. Recognize Chris Tiffany. 3 minutes.
From page 7 of the draft Civilian Police Review Board Manual, the Civilian Police Review Board must host one community forum per fiscal year to receive feedback from the public on the Durham Police Department complaint process and community police relations. The CPRB has allowed less than half an hour of public comments in 10 years. At the first ever public forum, they had trouble assembling a quorum, but they had an overflow crowd in the committee room upstairs with a capacity of about 100, so they moved down here to the much larger city council chambers, where in a meeting that lasted 4 hours, after lecturing the public, they only allowed about a dozen members of the public to speak for only 2 minutes each, and then later allowed me 1 minute for a prepared statement. Not allowing members of the public to speak for at least 3 minutes on public policy not only implies contempt for public input into public policy, it also prevents public policymakers from understanding how public policy affects members of the public. For example, you can be well educated, but selectively ignorant. A highly educated woman on the CPRB said she'd never been stopped by the police, so she can't understand police harassment. And women signed up to speak to City Council were not allowed to tell City Council about police harassment of women because the mayor would not let them speak. So now, what do you know about male cops harassing women? People signed up to speak should be allowed to speak for at least 3 minutes. Harassment of women.
Thank you. I had one question on, it was on HRC 22. It had to do with the appointments of the citizens to the Police Review Board. The intent was to have the city manager to do this, but I assume with the city council's approval, or what was the intent?
Right. The recommendation in the modification of that is that the manager will make recommendations for appointment to the board for council confirmation.
Well, it's just a wording in here. It says city manager and confirmed by the city council. Is that the intent of it?
That's correct.
That you have to have both.
Correct.
So in other words, if you bought.
We would bring recommendations for appointments, and council would either confirm them or reject them.
Well, why don't we change that to if? Because it seems like it says that the city manager, vacancies are filled by the city manager and confirmed by the city council. It seems like it'd be more appropriate. It says vacancies are filled by the city manager if confirmed by the city council. I think
That's fine. I mean, that's the same intent.
That's the intent, but if you don't mind, I think that might read a little bit better in terms of the intent. Are there any other comments on this item? If not, entertain a motion for approval. Changing the word from and to if. In other words, the manager does it, and if the city council approves it, it's done. It's not the city manager does it and the council confirms it. It's almost a foregone conclusion that you're saying the council will go.
No, I think I understand.
Okay.
I just,
All right.
so I'll move that we I'll move the item with the change in wording as recommended, as requested by the mayor.
It's been properly moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Call the question. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Are there any other items to come before the council this evening? It is. Which one was it?
Number 8.
Oh, number 8. I'm sorry. You must have pulled that one. Well, come on up, Ms. Peterson. Item 8 is environmental workforce development and job training contract between the City of Durham and the trustees of Durham Technical Community College. I recognize Victoria Peterson for 3 minutes.
Is there a representative here?
Good evening. Alan Wimmer, Office of Economic and Workforce Development, Adult Employment Program Coordinator.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'm Mrs. Peterson, Victoria Peterson. Now, this is what I'd like to ask. We have a lot of young men, and it looks like that you guys sort of reached out in the areas of East Durham. I live over close to North Carolina Central University and Durham Tech. I live in walking distance to a huge public housing. I would like to know if any of those young men were notified who live in the public, the Durham Public Housing. It's Paducah Terrace. I would like to know if you folks reached out to them and if you reached out to folks in the community. And Mr. Mayor, this is one of the things I would like to say. I'm pretty active. I stay out in that area. If this community is really going to attack the crime problem in young men who are caught up in this situation, and those who are not yet caught up in this situation, but will be, because I believe an idle mind is the devil's workshop. So when you go down some of these communities and you have young people, young men hanging around on the streets, and basically they say, well, Mrs. Peterson, I have a criminal record, and they won't hire me. Well, Mrs. Peterson, I've gone over here, and they won't hire me. And I've gone over here, Mrs. Peterson, and they won't hire me. And that's why, Mrs. Peterson, I sell drugs. Because, Mrs. Peterson, when they come on the streets and buy the drugs from me, they don't ask me if I'm a criminal. They have all different kinds of people coming, and I see it coming in my community. They don't live there buying drugs out of my community from some of these young folks and young men. So here's my question. I would like to know, Mr. Mayor, and these folks, of the Brownsfield study, and you guys have been getting this money for a little while now. How many of your young men that you have accepted have been in trouble with the law? And do you have some kind of guarantee that these companies will hire them once they have found out that they've been in trouble with the law? So can I hold my time left so he can answer, and then?
You have 44 seconds. Just hold it if the gentleman wants to respond to that.
Ms. Peterson, you had several questions. I'll try to address each one in the order that they were received. We did provide press releases. We also did orientation sessions at McDougal Terrace, as you spoke about. So we did provide opportunity for applications and people to sign up for the program there at the specific location that you're speaking about. In regards to the number of people who are former offenders, we did have roughly about 15 former offenders in the third class that we just recently did that we know about. Now, a former offender, the way we find out about it, they have to self-attest to being a former offender. So we don't do a background check to get into the training program.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things, I think we're on a good track. I think if you are doing this, we're on the right track for this kind of program. The city has had this program in the past, Mr. Mayor. But as long as we're training, we need to make sure we're training ex-offenders. They need to have first priority. And if some of them have difficulties in reading and writing, then there needs to be something else there. And I think if this program is going to be at Durham Tech does have some programs over there, folks who fall below and have some issues in reading and writing. Also, Mr. Mayor, I would like to just share with you, what's the age? Will that age group, can you tell me what the age group is real quick?
It's 18 and up.
18 and up, okay. So I think, Mr. Mayor, we have some of our young people that are still in their 20s that are hanging out in the high school system. You know, I think we need to reach out to those guys and gals. Some of them have stayed back several times and they're struggling. I think if you're also offering this program in the evening, I think we need to try to get some of those young men involved in this program. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. But I think this is what we really need to do, is to work with these young men who have been in trouble with the law. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would entertain a motion on the item. It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Councilman Brown. Madam Clerk, will you open the vote? Close the vote.
It passes 7-0.
Okay, are there any other items to come before the council before we adjourn? If not, the meeting's adjourned at 8:25 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.